We're in the middle of what has already been a pretty hectic offseason, featuring some massive trades having already gone down, and with a lot of summer left ahead of us, there's likely even more to come. Similarly, last offseason we saw a lot of shakeup throughout the league via the trade market, and as a result of it, this past season was greatly affected by all of those deals. Now that the season is over, it's time to take a look back at those trades and reanalyze how they turned out 1 year later. Which brings us to today's video. Today we're going to be revisiting all 5 of the big trades that went down last summer, and we will be regrading them based on what we know now 1 year later. Some teams look genius in hindsight, while others not so much. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first trade from the 2024 offseason we will be revisiting is the trade that swapped Karl-Anthony Towns for Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo, with the full details of that trade being on your screen, and the trades here are a B for the Knicks and a B+ for the Timberwolves. I know this was technically a 3-team trade, but the Charlotte Hornets were pretty much only involved to help make the money work, so we won't really be focusing on their end of this trade. When this trade went down, it was a message to the rest of the NBA that the Knicks were going all in on competing for a championship. Earlier in the summer, they had made another big trade that got this movement started, which we will be discussing later in this video, but this was the deal that solidified the fact that the Knicks were not messing around. Karl-Anthony Towns played a position of need at center. He unlocked a crucial part of the team's offense, providing another all-star caliber scoring threat that can shoot the ball as well as anyone at his position, and on paper, a starting 5 of Cat, Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges looks pretty damn good. This season, the trade genuinely boosted the Knicks into being an elite offense, ranking in the top 5 of the NBA on that end this year, but the defense also took a hit as a result of Cat's lackluster rim protection, with the team falling down out of the top 10 where they were the year prior on defense to now 13th overall on defense this year. He played well in the playoffs. The Knicks ended their conference finals drought, but they still came up short of their ultimate goal with minimal money to spend this offseason because of how much money is tied up into their starting 5. So this trade was solid for them, but not quite the home run that they were hoping it would be. Now, as for the Timberwolves side of things, they got minimally better trade grade here for this one because they managed to land a much better fit in Julius Randle for half the price, and the team was still able to make a deep playoff run, making it back to the conference finals. They even found a way to maximize Julius Randle's game in the playoffs, after he was previously one of the worst playoff performers in the entire NBA during his time with the Knicks, having averaged 22 points per game in this year's postseason, shooting very efficiently inside and out, making 50% of his shots and 38% of his threes. The Wolves re-signed Randle this summer too, to a 3-year deal worth about $33 million per year, which is, as I mentioned before, a little over half the amount that Karl-Anthony Towns is being paid moving forward. And after how clunky the double center lineups were in Minnesota with Towns and Gobert, they will happily take a better fit at a discount. Then when you factor in that they have Donte DiVincenzo under contract for 2 more years, providing some sharpshooting and defensive tenacity off the bench as a result of this trade, I do definitely believe that the Timberwolves got the slightly better end of the stick with this transaction. The next big trade from 1 year ago that we'll be revisiting is the trade that sent Mikal Bridges to the Knicks in exchange for a haul that included 5 first-round picks, with the full details of that trade being shown on your screen, and the grades here are a C- for the Knicks and an A for the Nets. Mikal Bridges is a very good player, and of course, the motivation to pair him with his former Villanova teammates Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart was too good to pass up on, but doing this at this steep of a price just does not look good at all for New York in hindsight. 5 first-round picks for Bridges still doesn't even sound real when you say it out loud, because it's just such a ludicrous amount of draft capital to give up for a guy that has never made an All-Star game and has seen his defensive impact regress slightly especially over the last few seasons. Sure, he was once in the mix for the Defensive Player of the Year award, and yes, he did average 20 points per game in Brooklyn, but his perimeter defense hasn't been all defense caliber since his Phoenix days, and his scoring numbers in Brooklyn resulted in a dip in his efficiency because he's not suited for a go-to role on offense. Hell, not even the Rudy Gobert trade that sent him to Minnesota included that many first-round picks, and Gobert is the NBA's all-time leader in winning Defensive Player of the Year awards. Bridges still did what he did best for the most part this season, scoring efficiently in a secondary role, albeit his three-point shot was less reliable than usual, and in the playoffs he made a few clutch defensive plays to help them advance, but overall, he was just not worth what the Knicks gave up for him. As a result of this trade, the Knicks are now very handcuffed in terms of being able to upgrade the roster moving forward without many tradable assets left or money to spend, so even though the team is still very good and in the mix in the Eastern Conference, it was also a drastic overpay. Now as for the Brooklyn Nets, they probably couldn't be happier with how things turned out. They got off the phone after conducting this trade, and they probably threw a party for being able to commit this big of a heist, because even at the time this felt like a huge overpay, and now with the Nets fully engaged in a rebuild, they have a lot of additional draft capital coming their way in the coming years. Bridges turns 29 years old next month, so he was never going to be a part of the Nets' long-term plans, and being able to sell him at his absolute peak value is a home run without question. Things change fast in the NBA too, so the picks that the Nets are getting from New York in, say, 2029 and 2031 could prove to be incredibly valuable if the team falls out of contention by then. The next trade from last summer that we'll be revisiting is the one that sent Dejounte Murray to the Pelicans and Dyson Daniels to the Hawks, with the full details being on your screen now, and the grades here are an F for the Pelicans and an A+ for the Hawks. This is by far the most lopsided trade of last offseason. The Pelicans at the time were still holding out hope that they could put together a unit capable of contending in a tough Western Conference at full strength, and in theory, point guard was their weakest position, so trading for Dejounte Murray to get him back playing the position that he's most comfortable at after playing a few mediocre years next to Trae Young in Atlanta wasn't a horrible idea, but unfortunately everything that could have gone wrong here did go wrong. Murray had what was easily his worst season of the last 5 years, shooting the ball terribly both from the field and from three, turning the ball over more than he ever has, and struggling both on and off the court to get acclimated with his new team and teammates. He was only able to play 31 games this year before tearing his Achilles, and then during his rehab process, he's been pretty vocal on podcasts, interviews, and reports about how he has hated his time in New Orleans. He claims that the staff hasn't taken good care of him like he would have expected, being someone recovering from a serious injury. He's had gripes with the coaching staff, and he's made it pretty clear that he doesn't want to be there. This trade set the tone for a pretty bleak season as a whole too, because the Pelicans flat out stunk this season, finishing with the 4th worst record in the NBA. The fact that they gave away an elite defensive talent and 2 first-round picks for this mess just makes things even tougher to justify a year later. Now, for the Atlanta Hawks side of things, they're praising the basketball gods every day that this trade fell into their lap. Dyson Daniels never got a consistent chance to prove himself in 2 seasons in New Orleans, so going to Atlanta was the best thing that possibly could have happened to his career. He immediately got into the starting lineup, taking the shooting guard role playing next to Trae Young. He led the NBA in steals per game, snagging 3 a night. He nearly tripled his scoring output, going from averaging about 5 off the bench last year on the Pelicans to scoring 14 per game with the Hawks, and he's solidified himself as one of the best perimeter defenders in the game at just 22 years old. The Hawks need all of the defensive help that they can get alongside Trae Young, and Dyson Daniels is proving to be a perfect fit there. One of the picks that the Hawks got from this trade was also used to then trade for Kristaps Porzingis this offseason, so their ability to manage these assets and flip them into pieces to help turn themselves around and become a playoff relevant team again has been very impressive, and their mini rebuild is exceeding expectations so far. The next big trade we'll be revisiting from last offseason is the deal between the Chicago Bulls and Oklahoma City Thunder that was a 1-for-1 swap of Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso, and the grades here are an A- for the Thunder and a B+ for the Bulls. Honestly, this one's proving to be a pretty strong win-win for both sides, which is pretty rare in the NBA, and it's even more rare to see it in a 1-for-1 swap. The Thunder were already very close to going all the way in 2024 when they emerged as the 1 seed in the West, but they fell short in the second round of the playoffs, proving that they were still a few pieces away. Josh Giddey was the team's lottery pick back in 2021 and had plenty of promising flashes through the years as a big 6'8" guard with impressive passing talent, speed, and versatility on both ends of the floor, but his inability to shoot the ball consistently made his fit off the ball next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander a bit of a liability, and he became tough to have on the court in a playoff setting. The Thunder needed more wing depth that could thrive off the ball, defend at an elite level, space the floor, and do the dirty work, so moving Giddey for Alex Caruso was a pretty savvy move for them. Caruso may not have been a big-time producer, but his defensive impact was immense all throughout their championship run this year, and I'm not sure if the team gets it done without his ability to make life hell for opposing ball handlers. The Bulls were criticized at the time that this trade was made, but in hindsight, it's proving to be pretty promising for them as well, because coming into the year, the Bulls didn't really have any quality passing talent in their backcourt because of Lonzo Ball's worrying health concerns, and they needed a point guard to run the offense. Giddey made himself very comfortable in Chicago, playing freely again with the ball in his hands a lot more, and by the end of the season, he was one of the league's most productive players. In his last 25 games of the season, Giddey was averaging 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists per game, proving he can reach the upside that many saw in him when he was first drafted. He's now a restricted free agent this summer, still yet to get a deal done, but the expectation is that the Bulls will match any offer he gets and keep him long-term to continue building on the progress that he made this year. If he does somehow end up leaving in free agency, then the grade for Chicago's side of this trade would definitely take a hit, but I don't really see that coming. And finally, the last big trade that we'll be revisiting from last summer is the deal between the Portland Trail Blazers and the Washington Wizards that sent Deni Avdija to Portland and Malcolm Brogdon plus 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks to the Wizards, and the grades here are an A for the Trail Blazers and a C+ for the Wizards. Deni Avdija started to show signs of an imminent breakout during the 2024 season with the Wizards, so Washington probably saw that as a good time to trade him while his value was up, but unfortunately for them, that was just the beginning of his emergence. His first season in Portland may have started slowly as he got acclimated to his new squad, but by the end of the year, he was easily their best player and is now a potential star in the making. In his last 13 games of the season, he was averaging 27 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists per game, shooting 52% from the field and 46% from 3. Of course, that's a small sample size, but it did show what he could do in a lead role when given the chance. He's a very physical player who uses his strength to finish strong in the paint. He's becoming a very reliable shooter from the perimeter, gaining more confidence in his three-point shot every season, and on defense, he's genuinely a stud out on the perimeter, making him a two-way guy that the Blazers are elated to have on their side. With players like Anthony Simons and DeAndre Ayton gone now too, he will be in a go-to role from the jump next season, and after all of that, the price that the Blazers paid for him looks like a bargain. For the Wizards, they unfortunately sold before the stock exploded. One of the first 2-round picks that they got in the trade did become Bub Carrington, who had a promising rookie season this year as a playmaker, but is definitely a few years away from being consistently reliable. They also brought in Malcolm Brogdon at the worst time, as Brogdon would go on to have his worst year as a pro with the Wizards this season, shooting a career-worst 28% from 3, struggling with injuries, and looking like a shell of his former self. His big contract is now off the books for Washington, as Brogdon is a free agent this year, still unsigned as I am making this video, but if Washington could go back, they would definitely try to get more in return for Avdija's services. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these trades 1 year later. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.